Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Dateable, a show all about modern dating. We are back again this week for our third episode of this season.
Yes, the season has been so killer so far. People keep telling us that, but definitely feel like we've gotten some really great guests this season.
Including our guest for this episode. His name is Matt, and we're about to embark into this discussion about the differences between heterosex culture and gay sex culture. Obviously, we're not speaking for everyone in these two groups, but it's an interesting discussion to get one person's point of view on some of the key differences.
Totally. And this stemmed because Matt was an old coworker of mine, and we were just like talking about the podcast, and he was like, this is just like an everyday Sunday for me. Like this, like we were talking about like the super scandalous sex stories on the podcast. And he's like, yeah, like I had like a 6-way the other day. So it's like his like basic stuff, like his like super basic. He just like, he kept saying how he was just like baffled by hetero views on sex. Like, and he grew up in a super Catholic household, so he like definitely has some theories of his own about why sex culture is the way it is. And I was actually listening to the Armchair Expert, that podcast, and they had Emily Moore. Yep, they had Emily Morse, who's like a really renowned Sex with Emily, and she went into like, it was all about basically how sex is like literally the one thing in the US culture that we just do not talk about. It's like so shameful, it's so like shame-ridden, like it's just, for whatever reason, even in 2021, there's still a huge stigma about talking about sex in predominantly straight culture. And in gay culture, there's just very different views on sex. So we thought it'd be a good topic to kind of explore the dichotomy between the two.
You know, when you travel, I mean, I always hear this when I'm in Europe, all the men always say like, American women are the most promiscuous. They always say that, right? But then they come to the US. I've had multiple guy friends tell me they move to the US and then they start dating girls Americans, and they're like, they're so prude. They're just nothing like they are when they're abroad. So there is a disconnect because we are kind of prude in this culture. But when we go abroad, we kind of just let it all go, and we are a lot more sexually free that way. So I do think there is something that we're not exploring here, and I'm glad that we're having this very open sexual discussion.
Yeah, or even if we're not prude, because I don't think that like everyone is prude, like, like speaking for myself, but speaking for other people. But I think there's still this weirdness about talking about sex. Like what happens behind closed doors happens behind closed door. And it's almost like if you feel like you are open about sex, you still feel like a little bit of a shame. Like I think about even when we do sex related topics and episodes, I'm like, oh my God, what if like a coworker heard this? Like I still have that thought go in my mind, even though I think of myself as a pretty sex positive person. There's still like this like scared feeling that someone's going to look down on you if they think that like you're single and you have sex, and like, it's weird.
Well, in terms of like the guy friends I have who have moved to the US from other parts of the world, they say it's like the rules that we have around sex. It's the whole, if I sleep with this person on a first date, then they won't take me seriously. And they just find that mind boggling because they're like, in my country, you just have, you do have sex, and then you don't, you can expect a relationship or you don't, or that's how you start a relationship. So the way we view sex as a way of, like a power exchange is very different than other parts of the world.
And that's exactly what we dive into in this episode. Like all these like different rules or things that we have been like conditioned to believe all this time. And some of them, Matt definitely was like, okay, I feel this in gay culture too. And others, he was just like, wait, what? He was like totally blown away. So we'll let you all hear the episode to hear all the different ones and what he thought about all of them. Again, it's one gay man's perspective. We're not speaking for all gay men, but there are definitely some things that we recognize of just having two men versus like a female male dynamic, right? Like out of default. And this could be also very different if we talk to two women in lesbian relationships. One thing, though, I think that was super interesting that we did fully get to go through, because there was just honestly so much to unpack in this episode. But he touched on it a little, just about like testing with sex. And we've talked about this a bit, like in our Facebook group and just on the podcast, that, you know, in straight culture, like asking someone for like an STD test is kind of like you wouldn't do it, like
taboo.
Right. But then like with testing culture changing with COVID and people like asking for COVID tests, like how will that change in the future in straight culture? But in gay culture, like doing tests or doing prep or talking about like your STDs or STIs ahead of time, it's just kind of like run of the course. Like it's not a big deal whatsoever. But they also did go through the AIDS and HIV epidemic, right? So I wonder if after COVID, this will actually start to trickle a lot more into straight culture.
I sure hope so, because why have we been doing this whole Russian roulette of STIs for so long and not knowing how you got something or who gave it to you, and then you just let that person keep infiltrating with other people? It's not the right way to do it, and it's not safe. And no matter how much we can say, oh, it's like awkward and ruins the moment, isn't your health and safety a priority in all of this as well? So I do hope that the testing culture does change for heterosex.
So this might be TMI, but have you ever had don't you love when it starts that way? Have you ever had to have the conversation with a partner and tell them that you had an STD and basically tell them to get tested? Because I have, and it's super fucking awkward.
Well, tell us about it. We're going to go TMI. Let's go.
No, it was just like, I mean, it was basically like I learned that I had an STD that was obviously curable, so it wasn't the end of the world. But like, I basically had to reach out to past partners of mine. And it was at a stage that I didn't have that many partners. Like there was one guy, it was I've mentioned him on the podcast, my like toxic friends with benefits. Mm-hmm. So it was basically like my current boyfriend realized that he had, I don't know, I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but like basically.
You started it.
Well, I'm not going to get into the whole piece of like how I found out. But anyways, it basically came out that like, it probably was from my side, and there was really only one person before my current boyfriend. So it wasn't like I had to go through like a whole list of people. Like it could have been a lot worse. Like I think about that Sex and the City episode where Miranda calls like every last person talking about chlamydia. So it wasn't like that. But I was not exactly on like good terms with this friends with benefits, because we were like good friends and it really just went downhill. And I remember like messaging him on Facebook because I had deleted his number. And he basically was like, can you just like, because I was like, oh, can we like chat on the phone for a few minutes? I want to like ask you something or like bring stuff up. I didn't want to like say what it was through Facebook Messenger. Right. And he was like, oh, can you just type it here? Like basically like didn't want to talk to me. And I'm like, no, I'm like, I don't want to talk to you any more than you don't want to talk to me. So like, can you just trust me that this is going to be like a 5-minute call? But anyways, he basically like he was like, oh, I don't think this came from me. And then like I never heard from him after. So I'm like, it totally came from him. But anyways, that's just it was just a very uncomfortable conversation with, especially with someone that you didn't really want to talk to anymore, that I had to like hit him up. And I surely as hell would not put that on Facebook Messenger of what I needed to say. That's for damn sure.
I feel like I had a very similar experience. I had HPV like everybody else in college. And when I found out, I told the guy that the only person I slept with that entire semester. And he was like, it's not from me. I'm like, who else could it be from?
I know. Why is that the go-to response? And it like kind of shames you to feel like you're dirty, that you had it. And it's like, first of all, I mean, STDs happen, so I don't want to say anyone's dirty for having an STD, but that's how I felt, I guess is a better way to say it. Like his reaction was so like, well, why would you think this came from me? And I'm like, because there's no other path of where it came from.
Yes. Like, and we didn't use protection. Think about that, dumbass.
Exactly. So, yeah. But I think there is this fault, and this actually kind of goes into COVID, but like in straight culture, I definitely feel like I'm much better about this now, but like there was a sense of trust that I had like with this friends with benefits. We were not exclusive, yet we were friends. So I was like, oh, like I totally don't need to like use protection. He's fine. I'm fine. I know him. And I kind of feel like that's like COVID now. It's like, oh, they're a friend. They don't have COVID. I don't need to wear a mask. But that is like a false sense of security. There's really nothing different between your friend versus some rando on Tinder. Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. And people will say whatever they want to make you feel comfortable. And they maybe sometimes they actually think that's the truth too, because they haven't been tested. They just assume so. It's just one of those like really awkward conversations. I mean, I remember when I was dating, I would just be like, hey, if we're not going to use protection, just want to make sure that we're only sleeping with each other, right? And of course, they're like, yeah, of course. But who knows? I can't verify that.
I do want to say, though, this friends with benefits that I bring up, he did reach out recently when the New York Times article came out.
Oh, I was like, because he finally admitted that he had the STI.
I'm pretty sure
10 years later.
Yeah. I was like, this has been like a good 5 years. No, more. It's been like 8 years. Yeah. So, you know, it was a nice message. I'm like, you don't know how much material you've given on the podcast. You really have changed so much. You are so influential as the mistake I would never do ever again that I learned so much from. So thank you.
Thank you. Next. Oh my, I did not expect that conversation to go that way. I love it. But let's bring it back to something that's not so TMI. We just had the most exciting, interesting, amazing virtual event, the most dateable competition. It was our rendition of a virtual co-ed pageant per se. And we had 6 contestants, 3 judges. It was one night. It happened last week. And it was probably the most fun I had in a really long time. I looked forward to it. Julie and I both dressed up in sparkles. The judges dressed up. The contestants had wardrobe changes. It was one of those nights that I felt like it was an award ceremony. It was just so fun.
It really was. And I do want to commend you again, because I think that you really did pull a lot of weight in this, because I think this is what lights you up. I could definitely see of the things we do. You love shit like this. So I'm so glad we were able to do it. And you did such a great job managing all of the contestants and judges and all of that. And I was blown away by the contestants. Like, I don't know if you had a little more insight, because I know you've been primarily the one talking to them, but like, I just did not I don't know, this stuff can be amateur hour sometimes. Like, I knew they were obviously vetted. Like, we got hundreds of submissions. We had people look at them. Like, there was clearly like a reason why these people were picked. But I still was a little skeptical of like what the talent would actually look like. But I was seriously blown away by all of it. Like the dancing, the comedy, like singing, like it was out of control.
In addition to the glitz and glamour, it was also about vulnerability. I feel like all 6 of our contestants are at some sort of crossroads in their life. And they were so honest and open with what they're going through and the personal development stuff that they were working on. It was very humbling for us to see and hear. I think the judges were blown away too. I mean, they messaged us after, was like, we did not expect any of this.
No one did. And I do want to shout out our judges. We had Mei Lee, Misha Bayrak, and Dr. Abigail Lev, who have been crowd favorites on Dateable. Probably remember Mei Lee. She's a former CNN journalist and correspondent, and we had her on the Can You Have It All episode. Misha Bayrak was the art of virtual sex with him, and he runs like virtual sex parties and more of like, you know, how does he call it? I'm probably like butchering his thing, but like sex positive communities. And Dr. Abigail Lev is the schemas expert, like how you're wired for relationships, our top episode of last season. We talk about her all the time. So we had like this like A+ roster of judges. And I feel like they all complemented each other in so many different ways.
It was just absolutely magic when you put all 3 of them on stage at the same time. They all had such differing opinions and commentary. It made the night so magical for me. And I got to hand it over to everybody who put themselves out there. It was a very courageous thing to do. We had lots of people on this call, I'm going to call it on this call, but it was actually part of this show. And the audience, I mean, the chat was on fire. People were just like, what is happening? I did not expect this. So for all 6 of our contestants, congratulations for putting your heart out there and opening yourself up to everyone who was part of this, part of the audience. It was a really special night to witness.
Yeah, we are actually selling the recording for anyone that missed this. A few of you have asked like, hey, I wasn't able to attend and make Thursday night happen. Can I still catch this in the recording? So you can actually get tickets in air quotes. It's dateablepodcast.com/events. It will be at a discounted price because obviously the live component is removed, but honestly, I'm going to rewatch it. One of our community members, Caitlin, she mentioned like, it's a great date activity. Like, to watch something like this, you know? And like one of our other community members, Shelby, like she mentioned, like, she's like, this is the live event we've all been craving the last year. And like, it was so clear, like how much we've missed, like comedy, live music, like dance productions, like all the stuff that like you know, but also with heart. Like it wasn't just like a talent rundown. Like there was just so much dynamic to it.
It was just so much fun. I want to do a screening of it, you know, invite a few people virtually and watch it again over and over again. Really, it was just such a fun night. So I can't wait for any of you who missed it to watch it, or for anyone of you who wants to relive that night, because I certainly do.
Should we reveal the winner? Or should we wait till next week to reveal the winner?
I think we should reveal the winner.
Okay.
I think if you're part of the community, you already know. Congratulations to Brian Clark, or should we say Tinifer? It was a joint effort. You'll know what we mean if you watch the show. He won. Mr. Brian Clark is Most Dateable 2021. He really surprised us with his vulnerability. And, you know, for that first round, it was all about showcasing why you're dateable. And Julie, like, I wouldn't even know what I would do. I might, you know, no. It's like that is like a really hard task we gave them. And all 6 of them interpreted it so differently. So Brian put his heart out there and told this very heartwarming story that made us cry. Julie and I were crying within 10 minutes of the show.
I know. I was like, I did makeup for once and my mascara is running.
It was just so touching to hear his journey, and his talent competition was hilarious.
Oh my God.
And the Q&A, he did such an awesome job with the Q&A. And I just love Brian. I love all 6 contestants, and I'm so happy for all of them to be part of this. And again, a big congratulations to Brian for winning this title.
Yeah, we got to get Brian on the show. He was phenomenal.
Phenomenal. He's so great. He's so great. And what's so wonderful is that we have such a strong sounding board community presence during this event. And that's why we love the sounding board. And I guess we can go into announcements now. This is really something we talk about every week. The sounding board is an extension of our Facebook community. So it is a premium community. We offer premium content as well as interactions, but it's been so worth it to be along for the ride, because it's a very close-knit community. We are not just basic. We go deep into the whys of people's behavior. We are each other's sounding board. We are each other's guide through everything that we're going through right now, especially with COVID and dating. It's just been such a wonderful community to be part of. So if you are interested in joining, you can find out more information at dateablepodcast.com/sounding board. And as part of the community, we also have a book club. And this month's book club, we're featuring our very own Logan Ury, her bestseller book. It's called How to Not Die Alone. If you want to get in on the action, join The sounding board, dateablepodcast.com/sounding board.
Yeah, this is going to be a special one because normally in our book clubs, we don't have like the authors there, but Logan offered to come because she did the episode with us last week and she's a huge member of the Dateable fam, but we do have our monthly fireside chats with guests and Logan was one before, but this will be a very special event. But I do want to read one quote that I got that Shieldy, one of our members, messaged me after the event. It was just like, this event was amazing. I enjoyed myself so much. But then it got sentimental and I was like, I'm reading this online. She's like, okay. So she basically said like, your podcast has literally changed my life. I have a family. And family, she means the sounding board family.
The virtual family.
Not like an actual family, but she had that before. And then she's like, a great boyfriend. And yes, that happened naturally, but you influenced me to open my heart and mind to new people. I started listening around season 6, and it's wild that we're on season 12. So much growth.
Oh, we love you, Shieldy. And also, we are the ones who put the information out there, but you're also the one receiving, and you have to be open to receiving this information. Some people are not at a point in their life to receive this yet, and that's perfectly okay. But that's why we love the sounding board, because it's a group of people who are at the exact same phase in their lives to receive this and to grow with this information. So we appreciate all of you so much. When we love you, Shieldy. We really, really do. You are family to us. Awesome. Okay. Is that enough for our announcements?
Oh, yeah. Just one very last thing. There is a little confusion, so I just want to clarify. We do have the general public Facebook group, which is Love in the Time of Corona, and then the sounding board, which Yue just mentioned. So anyone can join Love in the Time of Corona. Well, I shouldn't say anyone. As long as you're a listener, as long as you fill out the quick questionnaire. We're trying to not have it be total internet randos, but you get what I mean. It is a free group to join. As long as you tell us a little about yourself, we'll admit you. And then in that group, it's the basic stuff that happens with Facebook groups. There's posts, all of the people can ask questions. Our moderator Janet. Oh my god, I just called her Janet. Our moderator Janice does recaps of the episodes. I mean, it's a really great community. People love Love in the Time of Corona in itself, but the sounding board is kind of where the true magic happens. That's where the happy hours are and podcast discussion groups. That's where people chat via video. That's when the real friendships start to form, but also there's the ability to go to the events that we have, the Most Dateable. It won't be that was kind of our flagship big event for the year, but we do have every month we have workshops or fireside chats with past Dateable guests. So that's all within the sounding board. Awesome. So shall we get into it with Matt now?
Let's do it.